Okay. I was in an abusive relationship for 3 years. I only recently got out of it back in January of this year. It was hard, obviously. Nothing about it was easy. The feeling of being in love with someone who's done nothing but treat you horribly is something I cannot even begin to describe. Even more so the feeling of emptiness when that someone is gone. Your life revolved around this one person for however long. Whatever you do, whatever you say, how you act is all dictated by one person who isn't you. And then one day, all of a sudden, it stops. And you sit back and you realize you don't know how to be a person. I don't know who I am. I think some of the most important years in developing who you are as a person is your teenage years. They help shape you as a person. You learn your values and you make mistakes and you learn from them. Those years are crucial in defining who you are. I met my ex when I was 11. I turned 20 this year. I spent my entire adolescence on this person. Everything about me has been shaped by them because they wouldn't like me if I was anything else. It was a really difficult thing to accept. I know that getting out of that relationship was for the best, probably the best thing that could have happened. I got really, really lucky. January was the start of a new semester, so I met a lot of new people and made a lot of new friends. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would be alive right now. A lot has changed in the last 4 months that I've spent without them. The more I talk about what happened to me, the more I realize just how bad it was. It's not normal, and it's not okay for your partner to be grabbing you, yelling at you, getting in your face, physically harming you, insulting you, isolating you, or making you scared for your safety. None of this is okay. And I always knew that deep down. But whenever my ex would do this to me, I would say that it's okay, and they didn't mean it, and they just didn't understand how bad their actions were. And healing is realizing that nothing I say or any excuse I can make would ever make them become a better person. I think the hardest part of my healing process is learning that I was great multiple times over the course of several months from 2023 to 2024. And I was essayed dozens of times from 2023 to 2025. For context, I've identified as asexual since 2020, which my ex knew, and I just completely forgot that. That part of my identity was sealed away because I convinced myself that I wasn't, and I enjoyed the things they did when I didn't. The last time I spoke about it was 2024. I only said I was essayed instead of great because I didn't think it was great. I blamed myself a lot because I didn't say no explicitly. But the thing is, I did say no. There were multiple times where I did say I would rather not do something, or that I didn't know if I was okay with something. And my ex would get mad at me or just do it anyways. Back then, in my mind, unless I straight up say the word no, it didn't count. So it was my fault. But that's just not how consent works. I had begun to sexualize myself for them because it was the only way they would talk to me. It didn't matter if I felt disgusting or that my body hurt so much every day. I didn't actually feel much doing most of the things they did. Again, I'm asexual. I always hear people say how nice it is, but all I felt was the pain. I constantly felt like I was doing something wrong, And they told me all the time that I was doing it wrong, and they were going to make it better. This is what they wanted. It became all I was, the only thing I was good for. When I talked about this in 2024, I talked to two different people about how I didn't know what happened to me was even considered SA, because I didn't want to believe that my ex would do something like that. And it got back to my ex, who then proceeded to refuse to talk to me and spread multiple lies about me and say I was a liar and a terrible person, all because they were offended I would even think that they would ever do something like that to me. This is something they admitted to doing. And in the end, I apologized to them for offending them and said that I would stop thinking about the assault. And we got back together in January 2025. That's how messed up your mindset gets in these kinds of situations. You find ways to blame yourself for literally anything and convince yourself that you deserve it. And before you say, well, that's on you for putting yourself in that situation, it's not. These kinds of people are good at what they do. They're good at manipulating people and lying, and they get away with it because people don't take victims seriously. I've known my ex since 2018. I was assaulted in 2023. I knew this person for 5 years at that point. I spent almost every day with them. I trusted them more than anybody. I had no reason not to. I had no reason to think they would grate me when they've spoken to me about their own trauma and how terrible it was multiple times, only for them to turn around and do it on me. When someone gets you to this state, it's so easy for someone to make you feel like you are genuinely a crazy person. Words cannot describe what it feels like to think you are clinically insane and need to be locked up when you know deep down that you're in the right, but the most important person in your life is telling you that you're not. Last year, they had convinced me that I had something wrong with me to make me have episodes, as they like to call it, that caused me to have an attention-seeking addiction. It was awfully convenient that the attention-seeking was only with my ex specifically, because it wasn't an addiction. It was a trauma response to the fact that they abused me. I didn't realize that at the time, so I believed them. For context, my anxiety is so bad that I've gone days eating nothing but chips in my room because I'm too scared to leave my room, because I'm scared of people looking at me. My ex was the one who told me that it sounds like I have an intense fear of strangers, and 2 years later, they were saying that I have an attention-seeking addiction, and I believed them. I believed them so much, in fact, that I talked to a therapist about it, who told me that I was wrong and that it wasn't an addiction. And I proceeded to never talk to that therapist again because I was mad they would ever say that my ex was wrong. This is not normal behavior. No one should be making you feel this way, ever. The main reason I stayed as long as I did was that they would constantly blame their mental health on everything that they would do. They would do something bad, and whenever someone called them out on it, they would say it was because they were so mentally unstable, and it was actually everyone else's fault for not understanding that. They've said this since we've met in 2018. I was 11, and being an impressionable child, I believed them. I also started to do the same thing because I didn't know any better. But I learned and I grew up. Meanwhile, they continue this behavior to this day as an adult. Because they were doing it for so long, I started making excuses for them in my own mind. Every time they would hurt me, every time they would yell at me, every time they would grate me, I would think, it's not their fault. They just don't understand because of their mental issues and trauma. I felt like it was my responsibility to help them grow as a person by taking all the hits so they could learn what they're doing isn't okay. But they never did. No matter how many times I told them that they shouldn't treat people this way, they asked me to tell them when they go too far. And whenever I did, they would turn it on me and make me feel like it was my fault for being upset in the first place. Because according to them, I should have seen it coming, and that if I can't handle them treating me like that, I should just leave. But I didn't want to, because they were my everything. I was completely reliant on them for years. They've made me lose friends. They're why I didn't have a job. I was financially dependent on them. I didn't have anything. It was my fault for not being able to take it. It was my fault for being depressed. It was my fault for wanting to die every moment I was with them. It was my fault for not being okay with the way they were treating me. Because, of course, they would never hurt me on purpose. They just didn't understand, and I was the one who had to help them understand. So I stayed because they promised they were going to change over and over again, and then they didn't. I blamed myself a lot, and they always made me feel like a hypocrite. They would constantly bring up my past as a way to say I was the worst person than they are, so I didn't have the right to be upset with how they treat me. When I talked about my essay, before they admitted to lying, one of their defenses was that I hugged them while they were overstimulated, and I was actually the manipulative one who didn't care about their boundaries, as if those two things are comparable at all. I know they were overstimulated, and I apologize for that, but I didn't know at the time because they didn't bring it up until 5 months after it happened, and only after I brought up my essay. But I still think that was wrong of me. But to put that on the same level as SA, which by the way, the only reason I hugged them was because they were giving me the silent treatment, something they did extremely often. And after I hugged them, they pushed me, grabbed my wrist, twisted it, and yelled at me in public. Things like this happened all the time, bringing up completely unrelated topics, usually from years ago, that are objectively not as bad as the things they've done to me, to say I'm a terrible person who deserves all the things they did. And I believe them. You see, even before we started dating, I didn't view myself as a good person. I struggled to empathize with other people. It's much better now, but most of my empathy comes from logic and teaching myself to understand other people. But I didn't know how to do that as a kid. Emotions from other people made me really mad, especially negative ones, because in my mind, I couldn't fathom why someone would be crying, upset, or angry at something. And a lot of my anger came out in really negative ways, mostly yelling at people who used to be my friends. This happened in middle school. My ex still brings these things up to this day. No matter how much I grow, no matter how much I apologize, I'm constantly reminded that I'm not a good person by them. I will never deny any bad thing I've ever done in my life, nor do I think anyone is required to accept any apology I give them. It's something I think about a lot, and I'm constantly trying to improve. I started to be insecure about my lack of empathy because of how people would react when I told them. This insecurity is something my ex took full advantage of. In the past few months, after we broke up, people say things about me, and I just feel uncomfortable. I've been called kind and sweet and beautiful, a young, intelligent person, and I actually don't like it because I feel like that's not an accurate description of who I am. Not due to self deprecation or because I don't like compliments, but because whenever someone would say those things, I would think, wow, you don't know me at all. I must be really good at hiding how much of a terrible person I am, because I'm still not fully convinced that I am a kind or good person, especially one with my ex. Every day for years, they made me feel like I was horrible. At least now I know I'm not as terrible as they tried to make me believe, but it's going to take me a really long time to unlearn that. I'm not saying this for pity or for people to go, oh, don't say that about yourself. You're a good person. Please don't. I really don't want to hear that. But I truly don't think that in my current point in my life that I'm a good person. I want to be, and I'm going to be, but I don't think I'm there yet. But I'm going to get there one day. I know I talked about my ex a lot, and the people around me are probably sick of it, but my life revolved around this person for almost a decade. And then all of a sudden, they just stopped talking to me. They never dumped me. They never said anything to me. They just stopped talking to me. And a week later, I was blocked. When I was in the hospital after it happened, a nurse told me there's power in leaving. But I didn't leave. I never got the opportunity to be like, I hate you, you ruined my life, I'm done. I'm done with you. I didn't get that. I don't get to sit here and say, I left my abusive partner, and how proud I am of myself for doing that. I don't get any of that. So it feels like the one thing that I could have done to take my power back, to take my life back, is gone. I never got that closure. I never got peace knowing that this person can't get to me anymore because they left on their terms and they can come back on their terms too. So this is me taking back my power.